right now, your body is actually hiding a pretty massive biological secret from you.
Oh, absolutely. A huge one.
Like, think about the absolute terror of stepping onto a stage, right? To give a speech to, say, 1,000 people,
Oh, I'd rather not, but yeah.
right? It's awful. Your heart is just hammering, your palms are sweating, your breathing gets super shallow.
Hmm.
Now, compare that exact feeling to the unbelievable thrill of, like, boarding a plane for your absolute dream vacation.
Hmm.
Biologically speaking, your body has absolutely no idea what the difference is between those two events.
None at all.
It is the exact identical physiological response.
It's completely counterintuitive, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would naturally assume that human evolution designed like a unique biological recipe for every distinct emotion.
Right, like a different chemical cocktail for everything.
Exactly. That a terrifying threat would trigger one set of chemicals and, a massive life-changing reward would trigger another. But the architecture of anticipation in your nervous system is, well, it's essentially a single unified pathway.
And that is exactly what we're unpacking in today's deep dive. We are exploring this wildly fascinating intersection of human physiology and the English language.
Yeah, specifically how we use vocabulary to describe those intense, kind of confusing feelings of anticipation.
Because if the body's physical reaction is identical, then the only difference between crippling nervousness and, like, euphoric excitement is just our cognitive interpretation.
Yeah, it's the story your brain tells itself about what those physical sensations actually mean. Like, do you want what's coming, or are you desperate to avoid it?
Think of your body as a high-performance car engine that just got slammed into high gear.
Oh, I like that.
The engine itself doesn't know if you're speeding toward a destination you absolutely love or if
Yeah.
you're, desperately fleeing a threat in the rearview mirror.
Right, it just knows it has to move.
Exactly, and it has to move fast. It is raw, unadulterated horsepower just being unleashed into your system.
That engine analogy is exactly right. And because the internal horsepower feels identical either way, the English language had to develop this incredibly distinct, highly nuanced vocabulary to separate the two.
Right, because we needed to invent words to signal to other people what our internal engine was actually driving toward.
Exactly, yeah.
But before we get into the language side of things, let's look under the hood of that engine for a second. Because, understanding the actual biology is really the only way to make sense of the vocabulary.
Hmm.
Like, what is physically happening inside your body when you're just sitting in a waiting room, staring at the clock, feeling that wave of intense anticipation wash over you?
Well, fundamentally, both nervousness and excitement are triggered by a massive flood of adrenaline
Okay.
and cortisol hitting your bloodstream.
Yeah.
Your brain's amygdala perceives an upcoming high-stakes event, and it just sounds the alarm.
Right.
Adrenaline doesn't have an opinion on the event. It just has a biological job. And its job is to prepare your physical body for immediate action. It's the classic fight or flight response.
Which totally explains the physical symptoms.
Precisely. Your heart rate violently accelerates to pump more oxygen to your muscles. Your breathing becomes shallower and faster.
Yeah, and you get that profound inability to just sit still.
Right. Because your motor neurons are firing. They're priming your legs to either run away or sprint forward. And, crucially, your body begins shutting down non-essential systems.
Like digestion,
Exactly. Digestion shuts down.
which perfectly sets up like one of the most famous idioms in the English language. When your body diverts blood away from your stomach and sends it to your arms and legs, you get that fluttery, slightly nauseous sensation in your gut.
Yes.
We call it having butterflies.
Yeah. Butterflies in my stomach.
Yeah.
What's really remarkable linguistically is that native English speakers instinctively use this exact same phrase across the entire emotional spectrum.
Oh, totally.
You might say, "I've got butterflies," while grinning ear to ear about a first date. Yep. Or you might whisper it while looking completely pale and terrified before a massive job interview. The idiom just captures that universal biological truth of the diverted blood flow.
Wait, hold on. Let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
I have a really hard time wrapping my head around the idea that panic and joy are on the exact same neural pathway. I mean, it seems like a massive evolutionary design flaw.
It does seem that way, yeah.
Because if the physical feeling is absolutely identical and we're using overlapping phrases like butterflies, how do you avoid just like catastrophic miscommunication?
That's a great point.
Like if I walk up to a colleague and just say, I have butterflies, they might give me a pep talk when I'm actually just thrilled.
Right.
Or they might congratulate me when I'm secretly on the verge of a full-blown panic attack.
Yeah, and you're touching on the exact reason why human language had to evolve past those basic physical descriptors.
Yeah.
The ambiguity of just saying butterflies is a
Yeah.
problem. When your prefrontal cortex, that's the logical part of your brain, decides that this adrenaline rush is a bad thing, it needs to communicate distress. You need the people around you to know that you are interpreting this bodily sensation as a threat.
Oh, I see.
So the language bends to paint a very specific picture of discomfort and restriction.
Right, because just walking up to someone and saying, I am worried or I am anxious sounds incredibly flat.
Yeah, it's very clinical.
It doesn't capture the sheer violent force of the adrenaline pumping through your veins.
Exactly. I am worried is a purely mental state. But as we just established, adrenaline is a full-body physiological takeover.
Right.
Therefore, the language of negative anticipation has to focus on physical manifestations. For example, to remove the ambiguity of butterflies, a native speaker will usually escalate the phrasing and say something like, my stomach is in knots.
Ah, I love that. It takes that innocent, fluttery sensation and explicitly twists it into something painful, restrictive, and just negative.
Exactly. It clarifies the emotion. Yeah. Or consider another highly physical phrase, being on edge.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because on edge is such a brilliant spatial metaphor.
It really is.
When you think about it, being on an edge implies a precarious drop, like it implies actual danger.
Mm-hmm.
But physically, if I picture you feeling on edge, I always think of a taut violin string.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. You turn the peg, tightening and tightening that string, pulling it to its absolute physical limit. At that point, the slightest, gentlest tap from the outside world is going to make it snap, or at least vibrate violently loudly.
Yeah.
Which is exactly how an anxious person physically reacts. If your nervous system is flooded with threat-based adrenaline and someone simply taps you on the shoulder to say hello, you just jump out of your skin.
That is a beautiful translation of the biology right there.
Mm-hmm.
Being on edge means operating with a lowered startle threshold. Your nervous system is that tightened violin string. But, you know, the adrenaline doesn't just tighten your muscles, it drastically accelerates your cognition too.
Oh, totally.
The physical discomfort demands a logical explanation, so your brain starts racing to identify the threat.
Which brings us to the mental loops. The phrase going over it in my head, I know every single person listening has experienced this.
Oh, absolutely.
It's 2:00 a.m., you have a flight to catch or a presentation to give the next day, and you're just trapped in bed, ruminating. You are running high-definition simulations of every possible disaster scenario.
Because your body is telling your brain, we are in danger, find the tiger.
Right. Where's the tiger?
And since there's no literal tiger in your bedroom, your brain searches for hypothetical future tigers. And when that rumination spirals completely out of control, the language shifts from manageable discomfort into extreme or informal states of, like, system failure.
You move from being on edge to freaking out.
Exactly.
Right.
Freaking out, which is a highly common, very informal descriptor for active, visible panic.
Or, if the prolonged adrenaline has completely depleted your psychological coping mechanisms, you might just declare yourself a nervous wreck.
Yeah, that's a classic one.
Returning to our car analogy, you aren't just an engine revving too fast anymore. You have actively crashed. The chassis has fallen apart.
Yeah, the wheels have come off. And we shouldn't overlook that vague, lingering feeling of unease when the threat is unidentified either. People will often say, something feels off, I can't put my finger on it.
Oh, that's such a specific feeling.
It is. That is your amygdala registering a spike in cortisol and adrenaline, sensing a subtle environmental shift. But your logical brain just hasn't quite caught up to identify the exact problem. It's a low-level, generalized red alert.
Okay, so we have this incredibly robust, precise vocabulary for the negative experience. We have words for the stomach pain, the startle reflex, the mental loops, the total system breakdown. But here is where it gets incredibly tricky for your brain. What happens when you are anticipating something massive and you genuinely cannot decide if the physical feeling is a threat or a thrill?
Ugh, the gray area.
Yeah. Think about standing in line for a towering roller coaster.
Right.
You literally paid money for this. You volunteered. But as you inch closer to the front seat, the adrenaline violently spikes, your heart hammers, and suddenly your brain is caught in a tug of war. How does our language handle that overlap?
Well, our emotions aren't always neatly siloed,
Huh.
and language has to stretch to accommodate that biological confusion. We navigate this intersection using blended crossover vocabulary.
Like what?
You'll frequently hear people use phrases like nervous excitement Or they'll attempt to qualify their fear by saying, it's a good nervous, or I'm terrified, but the good kind of terrified.
Oh, that's so true. They are actively trying to assure their own brain. They're verbally acknowledging the fight or flight response while desperately trying to frame it within a positive, rewarding context.
Exactly. And when the internal confusion reaches its peak, humor often acts as a release valve. There's a fantastic, highly informal American blend word for this.
Oh, no, sir.
Yes. Nervous. It just smashes nervous and excited together into one nonsensical term.
I love nervous because it's essentially an admission of defeat. It's you throwing your hands up and saying, I can no longer parse my own biochemistry.
Yeah.
My brain is screaming, yay, and my body is screaming, run. But what happens to all that raw kinetic energy while you're just standing around waiting? I mean, you can't just vibrate in place.
You can't, because the adrenaline demands physical action, but the social constraints of the situation often forbid it. You can't run away. This leads to what psychologists call displacement behavior, which is commonly described in everyday English as having nervous energy.
Oh, nervous energy is so deeply relatable. This is the phenomenon where you have a massive life-altering Zoom interview at 3:00 p.m. and at 10:00 a.m. you suddenly decide that it is absolutely critical that you deep clean your entire kitchen.
Including scrubbing the grout with the toothbrush.
Yes, you are basically trying to launder the adrenaline.
Laundering the adrenaline is a brilliant way to phrase it. You are performing a completely irrelevant, highly physical action like scrubbing grout to discharge the unspent kinetic energy of an unrelated stressor.
Right.
Your biology is demanding that you fight or flee, but since you can't run away from a laptop screen, you just aggressively mop the floor instead.
So, what does this all mean for our daily interactions then? If we are actively masking our internal panic with obsessive cleaning or blending our words into nonsensical jokes like nervous, how do we accurately read what the people around us are actually experiencing? Because we don't exist in a vacuum, right? We manage anticipation in social groups.
That's a crucial pivot. Because we are highly social creatures, we've evolved conversational tools and observational cues to audit each other's adrenaline.
Oh.
We don't just listen to the words, we read the physiology.
Oh, okay.
When that internal engine is skewing negative and the person is interpreting the anticipation as a threat, their body language defaults to constriction. They try to make themselves smaller and tighter. So you might observe a colleague and say, you seem a little tense. Or you use the very universally understood phrase, you've got that look.
Oh, you've got that look. We all know exactly what that means.
Yep.
The jaw is visibly clenched, the breathing is shallow, the eyes are a little too wide, and the shoulders are creeping all the way up by the ears.
You're spotting that tightened violin string before it snaps.
Exactly. But if we flip the interpretation, what happens when that exact same biologically identical adrenaline rush is interpreted by the brain as a massive reward? Like when it's pure, unadulterated excitement.
Well, the external cues completely reverse. Instead of constriction, you see physical expansion.
The body just opens up.
Exactly. You wouldn't look at someone who is thrilled and say, you seem tense. You would observe their expanded posture and say, I can tell you're excited, your whole face is different. Or you'll notice their absolute inability to suppress their verbal output.
Right, you literally cannot stop talking about it.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the incredibly fun, highly kinetic vocabulary of positive anticipation. When your internal engine is roaring toward a destination you genuinely desire, the language drops all the painful metaphors and becomes deeply energetic. Just saying, I am happy doesn't even begin to cut it. You aren't just happy, you are hyped.
Yeah, hyped implies a deliberate, artificial elevation. You are building yourself up. And then there's the phrase pumped.
Pumped is another mechanical metaphor. It links right back to our engine analogy. If you are pumped, you are pressurized. You are flooded with fuel and entirely ready for explosive action.
My personal favorite in this category is the word stoked.
Oh, yeah.
If we look at the linguistic evolution of this term, it's fascinating. Stoked really gained its modern emotional resonance through West Coast American culture, heavily popularized by the surf and skate scenes in the mid to late 20th century.
Right.
Originally, the verb to stoke meant to literally add fuel to a fire, you know, to stoke a coal furnace.
So when a surfer says they are stoked for a massive swell, they aren't just saying they're happy. They are physically declaring that their internal fire has been fueled.
Exactly.
They are burning with roaring enthusiasm.
It perfectly captures the heat of the adrenaline. And speaking of specific sensory metaphors, we also use the term buzzing. It has slightly British origins, but it's really thoroughly permeated global English.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. I love the word buzzing because it immediately evokes the image of a human beehive.
Oh, that's vivid.
Right. When you tell a friend, I am absolutely buzzing for this concert tonight, you're describing a feeling of vibrating on a cellular level. You have an energy inside you that is frantically demanding to be let out into the world. You are literally vibrating with bees.
I love that.
It's a hyperactive, chaotic physical state, exactly like being a nervous wreck, but the emotional polarity is entirely flipped toward joy.
The polarity flip is a great framework. And notice what happens to the language when that positive polarity hits its absolute maximum peak.
What happened?
We abandon grounded physical metaphors entirely. We shift to spatial, astronomical descriptions. You are no longer just a hot furnace or a buzzing hive on the ground. You are on cloud 9 or you are over the moon.
Wow, yeah, the sheer force of the excitement has seemingly lifted you out of normal reality and gravity.
Exactly. And people will describe their physical bodies as being insufficient to hold the emotion. They'll say, I literally can't contain myself.
Like the joy is just too large for their skin.
Yeah. Or, interestingly, their focus shifts entirely to the manipulation of time. They will say, I've been counting down the days.
Which is such a brilliant contrast to negative anticipation. Think about the nervous rumination of going over it in my head.
Yeah.
That is a psychological attempt to delay or prevent the event from happening.
It's defensive.
Right. But counting down the days is an aggressive attempt to pull the event toward you faster. It is the exact same adrenaline, but a completely divergent relationship to the passage of time.
It's amazing when it works.
It is so wild how deeply our vocabulary is tethered to our hormones. But here's the inevitable reality, right?
Yeah.
Whether you are entirely stoked, counting the seconds until you board that plane, or you are a complete nervous wreck, furiously scrubbing your kitchen floor, eventually the clock strikes 0.
It always does.
The event actually happens. You deliver the massive speech, you walk down the aisle, the roller coaster pulls back into the station, the beehive eventually empties out. What happens to the body and to this massive vocabulary we've built up when the adrenaline valve finally shuts off?
Well, the biological reality is that the human body is not designed to sustain that level of sympathetic nervous system activation forever. Adrenaline and cortisol are emergency fuels.
Yeah, okay.
They're designed for short, explosive sprints to save your life, not for continuous days-long marathons.
Yeah.
So once the anticipated event concludes, your brain signals that all clear. The threat or the reward has been neutralized.
Sure.
The adrenal glands stop pumping, and your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in to aggressively force your body back to a resting state.
And that transition is not smooth. It is a very distinct, often incredibly heavy physiological crash.
Oh, absolutely. It's a sudden, steep drop, and the vocabulary immediately abandons the high-energy verbs and shifts entirely to language about survival, deflation, and exhaustion.
Right.
When a terrifying nervous event finally ends, the focus is purely on relief. You'll hear phrases like, I can finally breathe, which retroactively implies that you were metaphorically holding your breath, suffocating under the pressure the entire time.
Or people will say, I am so relieved, which literally means the heavy weight has been lifted.
Yeah.
You'll also hear people dramatically exclaim, I feel like I just ran a marathon, even if all they did was sit completely stationary in a chair for a 1-hour job interview.
And biologically speaking, they aren't exaggerating. Yeah. Their heart rate has been significantly elevated, their muscles have been flooded with oxygenated blood, and their nervous system has been running red hot for hours. The physical exhaustion they are experiencing is completely genuine. The biochemical bill has arrived.
But the crash doesn't just happen after scary, threatening things, and this is the piece of the puzzle that I found the most profoundly interesting in our sources. There is a distinct vocabulary of letdown after excitement, too.
Yes, and this is a phenomenon that catches a lot of people off guard. We call it the post-event blues.
Ah, the post-event blues.
It's this mild but pervasive emotional low, that sense of melancholy, sadness, or total flatness that occurs right after a highly anticipated, deeply joyous event is finally over.
You see it all the time. Someone spends a year and a half meticulously planning their wedding, or they save up for months for an unbelievable music festival, and the Tuesday after they get home, they just feel entirely hollow. They'll say, I'm a little sad it's over, or my personal favorite, I don't know what to do with myself now. It's as if their primary organizing purpose has been suddenly erased. Why does that happen?
Well,
Is the post-event blues just another biological recalibration? Like,
so
your body borrowed massive amounts of adrenaline and dopamine to get you through the excitement, and now you have to pay off the debt with a mandated period of chemical resetting.
if we connect this to the bigger picture of human biology, that is exactly what is happening.
Wow.
The human body relentlessly demands homeostasis. It requires a stable resting balance. If you aggressively spike the system with high-octane excitement and dopamine for weeks on end, the pendulum biologically must swing back the other way in order to let your nervous system repair and recover.
That makes so much sense.
It isn't necessarily clinical depression, you know.
Mm.
It is just your dopamine, well, temporarily running dry. Your body is forcing you to rest.
That is so deeply validating to hear. Because I think so many people feel a tremendous amount of guilt when they come back from a dream vacation or finish a massive creative project and immediately feel profoundly sad. They think, what is wrong with me? I should be radiating happiness. I just had the greatest week of my life.
Understanding the biological necessity of this cycle is vital because it allows you to give yourself some grace.
Mm.
Whether you are recovering from a terrifying presentation that went flawlessly or you are coming down from the absolute peak experience of your life, your body physically needs to crash.
Right.
Expecting yourself to stay continuously stoked or hyped forever is biologically impossible.
It's just the high-performance engine needing time to sit in the garage and cool down.
Exactly.
And I think this brings us to the real actionable value of today's deep dive for you, the listener. By mastering this entire vibrant spectrum of vocabulary, from the precarious taut violin string of being on edge, to the burning fueled fire of being stoked, all the way down to the deflated hollow relief of the post-event blues, you equip yourself to communicate your internal world with absolute pinpoint precision. You no longer have to rely on flat, inadequate words like happy or worried. You can paint a vivid, physically accurate picture of exactly what your body is enduring.
Words truly matter because how we choose to label our physical sensations doesn't just communicate our state to others. It dictates how we actually experience those sensations ourselves. It shapes the narrative our brain writes.
Exactly. You are handing the people around you the precise schematic of your internal engine.
And this raises a deeply important, highly practical question, something I want to leave you with today.
I hear it.
We have firmly established that nervousness and excitement are the exact same physical feeling in the body. It is just a rush of adrenaline waiting for instructions. So the next time you feel your heart pounding, your palms sweating, and those undeniable butterflies fluttering in your stomach before a massive challenge,
Yeah.
could you simply say out loud that you are pumped or stoked? If the words we use actually shape our cognitive reality, could consciously hijacking the vibrant vocabulary of excitement actually trick your brain into turning fear into fuel and simply enjoying the ride?
It's a fascinating experiment. Because if the engine is already revving and the horsepower is already unleashed, well, you might as well tell your brain that you absolutely love where you're going.